That's probably part of it.
Yeah. Okay. I'm about to go online on YouTube. So okay, you guys have to talk way more than I, okay? It's Women's Day.
It's probably part of it.
Oh, we can talk.
I'm gonna be honest, I don't know how to increase the volume.
Okay, we are online.
Hi, everyone.
Hi guys, thanks for joining. This is Essence of History. Today we're going to be talking about the women of history. My name is Amanda Armagost.
My name is Alyssa Hopper.
I'm Dr. Abbasi for Essence.
Well,
So,
Today's
your day.
national.
Is your day.
Are you sure it's our day? Because I'm pretty sure I read a comment somewhere that said Dr. Abbasi wants to be a woman today. You want to tell us why?
Yeah.
Why do you want to be a woman today?
Well, you're cutting me off guard now. So
Yeah. Okay. Well, today is International Women's Day. So happy International Women's Day to all the women out there
Woot, woot.
globally.
So what do we want to talk about today?
Today we're going to be just talking about some influential women in history.
Which woman in history would come to your mind, Amanda, when we think about influential women in the history?
When I think of influential women in history, I kind of automatically go to more recent history because that's what I've been involved in. So I'm probably going to get a lot of hate for this, but one person that comes to my mind actually is Kim Kardashian.
Okay.
I think that she is going to be a really monumental person in history. She gets a lot of attention now, but I think that some of the stuff she's doing, she doesn't get enough attention for, such as freeing men from prison. She's getting her law degree. She's helped a lot of wrongfully convicted people. And I think that this is pretty monumental in history because it's probably one of the first times someone like Kim is doing things like this, where she's almost a Nepo baby. Her dad had a lot of money. She's famous from her family, but she took that fame to really grow herself and create a brand.
Yeah, I mean, there's no question about that. She has made herself a multi-billion-dollar brand. And considering that how hard it has been, even in a recent history, for women to compete with men, certainly that is an achievement. But what do you think, why it was hard for women to compete with men? Why was it until recently, and even maybe now, for people like Kim Kardashian, why was it hard to compete with men in business?
I don't think women were put on an even playing field. Even now, I don't necessarily agree that we are necessarily on an even playing field, but up until recently, women weren't always allowed to be, the boss, the big ladies in charge of things, run a business, do that. Up until, kind of recently, we see that more. So that's probably why we didn't see it as much in history. But
yeah, it has never been a better time to be a woman than now. This is the fact. So, and if you're interested truly to know the statistic of that, you should read about the linguist, philosopher Steven Pinker, who dissect literally the position of the woman and the disadvantage that the woman. I'm sure there are still in many countries, the women are disadvantaged in many regards, and we just heard about what's going on in Iran and so on. But in the West, we are getting where the equality is not just a word. Certainly, women are paid less than men in most of the job and advanced less in most of the job. But when Pinker looked into that, that was not because they were women. It wasn't a tax on being a woman. It was a tax on having children. So once you eliminate that, women and men actually, at least in most of Western, modern civilized countries, they advance at the same rate. So the good news is for women who are growing up now, it has never been a better time for your goals to be a woman. Still, many women have to decide between having children and a career. That is a fact. And unfortunately, it's going to stay a fact in the United States for a long time. In some of Scandinavian countries, they try to solve that in a different way. What I mean by that is that United States, most of the time, 90% of the time, maybe even more, husband and wife, they have children, and the woman stays home while men advance their career. In Scandinavia, they try to, and in French and in Europe general, but mostly in Scandinavia, they try to divide paid time off for both men and women. And if the man doesn't take it, it expires, it goes away. So they sort of incentivize as well for men to take time off and take care of the children. And that has been truly a very successful method in not having so-called child tax on women. So, but
even with that, even with men taking time off to take care of the children, it's still not equal and it's still not balanced, because if a man is making 30% more than the woman and he's taking the time off so the woman can work, I think that both that at the end of the day, you're going to suffer, because then you're going to have less money.
Yep, but that is exactly what Pinker dissected. The men are not making 30% more than women, except if you have a child. If you have a child, you choose a job, you choose an economic situation that you have more freedom. And in the free economy, more freedom comes with less pay. And that is actually
I've read like when I was studying psychology in school, I've read studies that show that when applying for jobs, if a woman has a child, it's almost like a mark down on their, like, let's say there's a grading system. Instead of being a 10 out of 10, you'd be a 9 out of 10. And a man with a child, he's actually seen as more trustworthy when it comes to hiring. And so he would be an 11 out of 10, where a woman loses a point, the man gains a point.
Well, I'm sure that in many, that those kind of disadvantages are still, I'm sure they still exist in some regards. But again, I'm just reciting to you when systematically a scientist whose job is to look at academically at these kind of things, to look at the data, dissect them and make them understand. At least in most of Europe and United States, recently, women do not earn less than men because they are women. Women earn less than men for multiple reasons. Most of them is related to having a child and wanting to have freedoms, more flexible, more less restrict kind of regimen of the and let's put it this way. You see how I'm working. I could not be working as I am if I was a woman and had to take care of my children. I'm in a lucky position that somebody else is taking care of my children, so I can work like 100 hours a week, and that is part of but there is no question that over the history there were lots of women that would wanted to have a career, and they were disadvantaged. Let's talk about Kim Kardashian. I think in a way, I mean, I know Kim Kardashian through you, Amanda. I didn't even know who Kim Kardashian is before you, but more I'm looking at that, more I'm agreeing with you that she empowers women, that they have opportunities, they have possibilities, and so on. So it is, and bring that awareness out there. So let's talk to you, Alyssa. When you think of women of history, women who shaped the history.
I don't know why, but my first person that comes to my head is Amelia Earhart. Don't ask me why. Marie Curie.
Amazing history behind that. Yeah, what do you know about her, and why is your woman of history?
I don't know if that would be my woman of history, but for some reason it's just
she's a huge woman in
the
history.
First woman I remember, I guess, hearing about in school. She was a first pilot, I believe, that flew over an ocean or a
Like
large
across
body
the
of water.
Atlantic,
Yeah,
right?
there you go.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, that was back in the days, so when women barely could have jobs, let alone pilot an airplane that was
Mhm.
barely even an airplane at the time.
Yeah,
So that alone is a crazy fact. But
did you know though, the very first time she did, she was not allowed to pilot it. She had to sit in the back and just watch it, because as a woman, you weren't allowed to be a pilot or do something like that.
mhm.
And so she had to truly fight for it to become to earn that. Whereas, and truly for her, just because she was a woman, she had to earn the privilege
The respect.
Yeah.
but yeah, she had to truly fight for it to even sit in that pilot. And we obviously all know that she had to have extraordinary skills, way above her male peers, to even be accepted as one. What else do you know about Amelia Earhart? Because there are few things that probably most of people don't know.
I'm gonna
about-
guess that if most people don't know them, I'm probably most people. So
Yeah. So one of the things that she was very much advocate of the woman defining their life as general, not only in aviation. Like, did you know that she has a open marriage and so on? Did you know that?
I
I was
didn't.
gonna ask if the secret that you were gonna tell us had to do with her like sexuality, relationship
Well,
status.
for a long time, the woman's place was in the kitchen and on the side of the kids and raising the kids, and and a man that sleeps around, we just say, what can you do? It's a man. But for a woman to just having a open, living their sexuality openly, then automatically they were branded, or like with a big A on
Mhm.
their chest and so on, and they weren't really seen as a with equal kind of glasses, or from the society side of the society. And in that time, she was just a rebel, just a maverick, and advocating and living what she considered her life, the only life that she got. She wanted to live that. So she was a big, I would say, thorn in the eyes of lots of people, that they would think that the woman's place and job is in the kitchen and with the children and preparing the food. I remember a while back, I saw a magazine from 1920s, I believe, about the woman, how to be preparing yourself for arrival of your husband. Like,
Oh, I've seen that.
you remember that?
Yeah.
What do
and
you
it's like,
remember? What do you remember on that list?
well, I remember it was saying like freshen up, do your hair and makeup, take a 10-minute nap so you look refreshed, make sure you smell good, make sure the house is clean, and there should be a dinner ready, and you should allow him to eat first. Don't, take a bite before him.
You see, I'm laughing
actually,
already. It
That's
is
not that old.
no, it is about 100 years old, or maybe 80
But
years old.
the ideas behind it, and it didn't end that long ago. That's still how my
Yeah.
grandma treated my grandpa.
But do you see that, for us, is almost like a comedy, like a comic book.
Mhm.
This was the real life in United States, not anywhere else. In United States, just 70, 80 years ago, and the ideas, even though we didn't talk about it, maybe still valid in some areas. That is what they expect a woman to be, that sacrificing your entire life and integrity for the family. And this and Earhart was just the opposite of that. I mean, completely opposite of that. She was a free woman. She lived for ideals that she considered for her or be adequate. And I don't condone, I don't, say yes or no, or don't put a value of that. But she decided she want to live her sexuality as she seems fit, not as how other people seem fit for her.
Mhm.
And that should be today we agree with that. That is a personal choice.
Mhm.
But in her time, that was beyond revolutionary. So, and that is truly, she definitely is a woman of history, not only because her flying skills and how she fought for it, but because of the ideals that she put in place that are way ahead of her time. Do you know how she died, Alyssa?
Didn't she like get lost with her airplane and they never found her?
Yeah, she did. They flew, and she was actually with another aviator, and she was the pilot, and the aviator was obviously the managing the flight, and they were going to land on an island somewhere in Pacific, I believe. And they were and just by having being a little off, they couldn't make it. Practically, we lost contact. They lost contact to them in the flight, and they were never found. I mean, there's no question they died because they ran out of fuel and they couldn't find the.
Well, there is actually a question about it. It's a conspiracy theory that it didn't happen and that she's still alive and out and about.
Mhm.
Just want to put that out there in case she's watching.
Yeah. No, if she's watching, how old would she be? If she was watching, how old would she be?
Not too old to join a podcast.
Not too
Yeah,
old to
well-
be my friend.
Well, she would be probably over 100 years old. If she would be alive, she would be over. As a matter of fact, I want to go and look when she was born. Amelia. Oh,
It has a 7 in it.
yeah, she disappeared 1937 at the age of 39. So I'm afraid she would be like probably 120 years old if she was alive. So I'm not.
That's doable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't
Now,
know. Who's your favorite woman from history?
well, I'm a nerd, so probably that you have guessed that the woman of history, there are two women, and both of them are science related. I'm sure you can guess one.
No,
It
I
is
don't think I can.
Unless my first thought is Henrietta Lacks, and I know she didn't get to be a scientist. She was just
My I'm guessing some woman of physics.
You're right. You're right.
brilliant.
Her name is Mary Sklodowska, but the rest of the world know her as, yes,
Mary.
Curie, Mary Curie.
Oh, I
Or
said
Marie
that.
Curie.
Did you know that was the other lady in history I said Amelia Earhart and Marie Curie.
Oh,
But I didn't
Yeah.
realize that her last name was not originally that. Wow, I'm
Yeah,
kind of
she was from
embarrassed.
Poland. She was from Poland, and she grew up in Poland. So practically end of the last toward the end of the 1800s, and at that time, women weren't supposed to go even to school.
Mhm.
I mean, the primary school reading and writing, but not to like university and so on. And from the start, she was a rebel. She not only went to school, even though she couldn't get a degree, but she and some of the friends, they created a school for young girls that they would get in the house of somebody and then bring these girls and teach them. And that is what it is. You don't have to go to school to learn. You just need to want to learn. And they even had a name for that. And I made a TikTok about it. I'm not going to go there. Of this group of women that gathered this woman in their home environment and gave them a very high level of education. But eventually she decided, Mary Sklodowska decided that there is no future for her in Poland, neither in Germany at that time. But it was one country that would let the woman, it's still with lots of limitation, but have a career. Do you know where she went to? Well, most of the people think Marie Curie is not her real name, or not originally name. She had a Polish name. Marie Curie is called Marie Curie because she married to Pierre Curie. And Pierre Curie was a professor in France, in Paris. And when Mary decided to go to France, she went there to study and to learn and teach. And she was just somebody who wanted to advance science. By the way, to this date, she's the only person in the whole world who got the Nobel Prize in 2 different disciplines, in chemistry and in physics.
Wow.
Yeah, this is still has not been achieved by anybody else. Now, she went there and she started, in the school, and she still had lots of difficulties to get access. Even in France, at least it wasn't illegal. And then she obviously get to know Pierre, and Pierre, nobody would really hire her as a primary thing, but she got the assistant of Pierre, and Pierre was as well a man ahead of his time. He understood the brilliance of Marie Curie and allowed her to practically not only collaborate, use his name, but have her own kind of agenda, the research subject and so on. And the rest is history.
Literally.
A brilliant mind is.
What kind of science, like what was she researching? What kind of stuff was she doing? I feel like we just kind of covered like a photo of it, but not really what it is.
Yeah, she worked with the physical kind of phenomenon that we know today understand as radioactivity. Like long before people knew what the radioactivity is or what X-rays are, she discovered that certain elements, they sent some energetic particle that at that time they had these photographic plates. Literally, when you would light on it, and then they would change the silver from suspension to particles, and then that's how you would take pictures. And she noticed some pictures that are never exposed, they get darkened. So, and then her inventive mind, her really curious mind, found out with lots of experiment that there is this energetic particle, kind of light, that goes through everything and still able to darken these photographic plates. And then I'm more on that. She when she got into the depth of it, she actually discovered there is a series of substance, they called it radioactive substance, variation of some elements that are naturally emitting this energetic X-rays or gamma radiation or alpha particles. Practically, the radioactivity that we understand today is a part of what she researched and discovered. It is a big deal. I cannot imagine. Only people who are familiar with the history of science, they know what a big deal that is for her time. And it was not an easy task, It was a glorious task at all. Like, she had to, like for radium, she found out that there is a some remaining of some industrial process that is very tarry looking substance that emit this. She had to get many tons of it, and with hand, and Pierre sometimes helped her to do that. She had to refine that from tremendous amount of this material to get like a milligram of that radium. That then it was a back-breaking job for her to do that. Okay, so and there are these pictures of her that she's black. All the things, and her face is black because this material was black, and so there is a lots of back-breaking, bone-breaking work involved in that. But she had the stamina, she had the determination to do that. How can she not be my idol in science?
Yeah.
Where I know what it takes to create anything new. There's a sad story though there still. She got Nobel Prize. First of all, they didn't want to give her the Nobel Prize. They wanted to give it to Pierre Curie, but Pierre stood up for her, said, no, it's only my name, but she did the job. That is a true man. I see that true man there. And secondly, and there's a sad story there that actually Pierre died in a carriage accident in Paris. Pierre was a scientist himself, and he was in his talk on the street. He didn't pay attention. He was overrun by a horse carriage, and he died. And for the second Nobel Prize, that Pierre was dead for a long time. And
how did she get to continue doing science stuff without Pierre?
She got accepted because of her brilliance. You see, there is an old picture of these huge minds. On that picture, every single on that picture, which was done, I think in 1920s or so. This Einstein is on that picture. Max Planck is in that picture. The only woman on that picture is Marie Curie. Okay, so she was a giant in science. So she got accepted after that. But the sad story is that this continues. After Pierre was dead, she was alone and did lots of her job as a research by herself. But then she fell in love with a married man. And there are really the heartbreaking the letters that they exchanged. And this is what I think, is a story interesting about the history. Behind every history, there is a human. And we always neglect that. She fell in love with this man. Nobody knows to what extent that love affair, whatever you want to call it, went. But that was the publicity disaster at that time, even in France, to a point that some people suggested to her, and the Nobel Committee suggested to her, after giving her the Nobel Prize, that she refused it, that she doesn't accept it because of that. But she said, rightfully, this is for scientific work. What does it have to do with my personal life?
Yeah.
And so there's lots of sad history behind that. But I believe that very few women or men, as a matter of fact, have given to the world as much as she has given to the world, and with the dedication and truly hard work. I have always this picture of her in mind next to this huge, she had to process tons of this black material, and she's doing it herself with a shovel. And they have to put it in water, boil it, and then go through a refining process and so on. And I have that picture. Whenever I think my life is hard, I have that picture in mind, that what she had to go to really do what she was passionate about. So the next woman of history for me is Lisa Meitner. not many. Unfortunately, she's not as famous as Marie Curie. But many things that we attribute to big discoveries in the quantum physics and physics as a general is what she produced and man took and did as their own work in her time. And she was a Jewish scientist in Germany, where you were doubly cursed to be a Jewish and to be a woman. And she did the hard work, and other people just took advantage of it, and they won Nobel Prizes for that. At least with Marie Curie, the world came to know her and so on, but Meitner was lost to history because.
What are some of the things that she did?
Well, physics and quantum physics are full of, calculation, theoretical kind of understanding about how matter works, how the interaction between certain phenomena is. It is about that she had the brilliant mind to do the mathematics of certain calculation that practically widened our understanding of the quantum realm and particle physics and so on. And literally, the 5 other people, based on what she brought together, 5 other people got Nobel Prizes for the work, and that is not even unusual. Our understanding of the galaxies and so on is based on. I'm not going to go there. Based on the work of another woman who looked at the sky and all those, photographic plates, and discovered. Lots of things we know about the astronomy, not astrology, astronomy, and then other people, even big name, they got credit for that, and so on and so forth. So, history of science is full of women who have dedicated their life, but unfortunately, some other, mostly men, took the credit for. Have you guys watched? There's a movie out there. It's called Hidden Figure. Have you guys watched that?
No.
I truly recommend that to everybody who's a woman or who has a daughter, or to watch that, because that shows not long ago. That's about this. When I tell you computer, what do you understand? If I tell you computer, Amanda, what's a computer?
When I think of a computer, I actually think of a monitor.
That's true. I'm
Yeah.
guilty too. I also think of a monitor.
Yeah, I
when
think of a
computer,
yeah.
the screen.
Okay, in 50, 70 years ago, about until 35 years ago or 40 years ago, a computer was a person who does calculations, sitting on a desk on a piece of paper, and does this routine and boring calculation, because we didn't have the computers to do the calculation. And so, like in any science or economy or big company, they would have these people sitting on a desk. They get these numbers. They had to subtract, add, calculate, do mathematical things with them to get the result of that. And guess what? 99% of them, they were women. So at that time, when they did the Apollo, the missions, 1950s and 60s, there were lots of calculation need to be done. They had this woman, like hundreds of them, sitting in a big place, and all they do is just calculation. And they used to be called computers. So the reason computer is called computer is because the computer is doing now what those people used to do.
Yeah, computing.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. And
I have a question. When you were in school, when you were in med school in Germany, how many of your professors, like ratio, were women to men?
Probably 40 to 60, 40 women, 60 men.
And then what about school in Iran when you were growing up?
Well, I was when I was in Iran, I was a child. It was before the revolution, in my school, probably 90%, 95% of my teachers were women, very few men. And then later on, when we went to the after revolution and so on, women would teach in the girls' school and men would teach in the male school. They wouldn't mix. So, so that was the distribution was then different.
So with everything going on right now in Iran, are women still teaching?
Well, the good news in Iran is more than 60% of the university students are female. One of the things I think the Iranian Revolution did is, lots of traditional people before the revolution, they wouldn't send their girls to school. The father said, I'm not going to send my kids to school. Contradictory part of that is that after revolution, when they separated the school completely, these parents, they didn't have any reason not to send their children to school because there wouldn't be any boys there. It would be all girls. So the girls' education skyrocketed after the revolution in Iran. And now this is the aftermath that this government has to deal with, because there are lots of well-educated, highly motivated women, and educated, motivated women cannot be put in a corner and clean dishes, okay?
There is nothing more dangerous than a powerful woman.
Yeah, that's true.
Educated woman.
An educated, powerful
Now,
woman.
power is most of the time, 90% of the time, the result of education. Power and that is what I think one of the side effects of the Iranian Revolution was that by creating an environment, there was no excuse anymore not to send your kid to school.
Do you remember your first male teacher?
Oh yeah, I loved him, because when I was in elementary school, most of the women, they were very rigid and so on, but this guy was so funny. That was, he taught for maybe a month or two in my primary school, and he was the funniest guy. We all absolutely loved him. But most of us cried when we knew that he's not going to come back.
Yeah. When you first walked into the classroom, were you shocked to see a male teacher?
At that time, it was different. It was like,
Yeah.
what's going on? That's the male teacher and so on. So yeah, it was. But coming back to education and so on, I think and woman of history, I think it has been a really long battle for women to take their place in our society. And it's going to be not easy. It's not going to be easy. We cannot change the whole world all at once, but it comes all back to that. But if you're a girl right now starting to define your future, it has never been a better time to be a woman.
Yeah, I think social media plays a big impact on that too, actually, because we can spread knowledge so fast now, and women get to share all of the amazing, beautiful things that they're doing and empower other women to do the same thing. Whereas maybe 10, 20 years ago, before social media, we wouldn't be seeing women doing all of these things. Like that girl on TikTok who she'll be in her firefighter gear and all that stuff. Back before social media, I would not have thought of a woman firefighter.
Yeah.
It's the little things, like you said as well, that it can be positive. Like we know Amanda, she has her dogs and her cats, but she also has chickens. And I would have never thought, at 25, I could own chickens, a dog, a cat, work at this and that, but even just seeing her do it, it just opens your eyes, let alone the fact that Amanda could then put that out there and a million others just like me could go like, wow, cool.
Yeah.
That's possible.
That's a good point, Alyssa, because then probably other like young girls that are living alone are like, oh, I can have my own chickens. I can be more self-sustainable.
Right. It's the little things.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be winning a Nobel Peace Prize, whether that's amazing. I'd love that. But yeah, it's the little empowering things. I think that's a great word to use it.
But do you know what I think is the biggest impact of the whole social media and everything there is on a woman's life is that for a long time, the definition of a woman was a wife and a motherhood. Like I remember in my time in Iran, there was a saying that say, if a girl is 20 and meaning that is still a girl, meaning not married, don't have children, you should cry for her. That the definition of a womanhood was mother and wife. If you don't, then if you would fail on that, you never can be fulfilled. And I think we can say for sure that is history now.
Oh, that is so far history that now there's actually studies showing that the happiest people on earth are single women with no children. There's actually studies that are showing that now.
Yeah, well, what I'm getting at that it is that women are not defined by these two attributes, motherhood and being a wife. They are not defined by their association with a man. As a matter of fact, Amanda, they call you Miss Armagost, right? When you marry, they call you Mrs. like Smith or somebody else. You know where that comes from, Mrs. Smith? Imagine you marry John Smith. Your actual name in a traditional way would be Mrs. John Smith, meaning the mistress of John Smith. Can you imagine that? Think about that. That you would be defined legally by mistress of John Smith, not Amanda Armagost anymore, but the mistress of John Smith.
Yeah, that actually is something that I think about more often than you would think. If you know my friend group, we're a pretty liberal group of girls. And a lot of my friends actually have talked about that. They're not interested in taking any man's name. They either want to keep their own last name or create a new family name.
Which is a very common thing that I noticed just from going through PA school. The amount of people that are married or engaged that said that they will be putting their maiden name on their certificates, their diplomas, any sort of licensing, because they said that they earned it, their husband did not, and therefore their name will be on their coats, on their things. I'm not quite there. That's not me.
That's not you, yeah.
But I get it. I completely get it.
Right, but can you imagine now, but the divorce rate that we have, what a big hassle it would be going back and changing all of that. Now, Mrs. Smith, Dr. Smith, and so on, where you worked as a single person and your thing, and now you have to go back and change all those documents that are issued in the name of a guy that cheated on you with another person and you divorced.
Hey, now let's not get into some personal stories here, Dr. Bossy.
No. So
it's getting too real.
So I think in 2023 we can agree. Now, the good news is I know there's lots of things that we talk about the Middle East, Iran, and so on. Did you know in Iran, no woman ever changed her name because she's married? They keep their name. That is how it is. Why would they?
Well, I just learned that in Poland, I don't think anymore, but back in the day, if you were a male, your last name ended in an I. And then if you were a female, you had the same last name, but with an A instead of an I.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, that's an inclination of the language. And in many, Slavic languages, it's the same. But still, you keep your name. It's just the inclination of the name. It's not it's the same name, but just a female and male version of it. But I'm talking about truly changing completely your name to name of your husband. That does not happen for example, in Iran.
Yeah, because isn't your last name a lot of times your dad's name in Middle Eastern countries?
It's your dad's name.
So it's
Yes.
still an extension of,
But not the wife. The wife
and a
doesn't
little
take the
bit,
name.
like, what's the word I'm looking for? I don't want to take it.
Patriarchic
Yeah,
society.
it's still a little yeah, because it's your dad's first name. It's not your mom's name who gave birth to you and raised you.
Yeah,
I
I
think
mean, everybody has to have a name. So, in some countries, you get a double name, like in some Spanish countries and so on. But we are talking today about the woman of history, and we went through three people. We could talk about it for weeks, but I think we brought three people here together, and I never would have thought ever that I put in the trio. I put next to Marie Curie, Kim Kardashian. So this is the first for me. But Kim Kardashian should call you and thank you, Amanda.
She will.
Makes me kind of interested to see what the history books are going to look like in 100 years.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Do you think there'll be a picture of Kim Kardashian in a history book of school?
there will be a photo of Kim K. It's just a matter of
When?
what Kim K.
What hair?
But there is a picture of Marie Curie almost 150 years ago everywhere still. So Marie Curie is beyond the speculation for sure.
Correct. I agree with that one.
And
Yeah.
Amelia Earhart as well.
I agree.
Yes,
Yeah.
definitely. And both of them, they had the history, they had the personality that was way ahead of their time.
I have a question though, as we kind of wrap things
Mhm.
up here too. This is more specifically for Dr. Abbasi, but I think Amanda has a good idea too. Last week, we talked about the founding fathers of the United States. What do you think it would have looked like if it was like the founding mothers of the United States and roles were reversed? We
I
had
think-
females in charge of writing the Constitution.
I think that's a really interesting question. I'd like to hear Dr. Abbasi's opinion on it.
I know it's hard to wrap our heads around because it just
Yeah.
wasn't a possibility. But like the way I think of like right now, we took our best women with the knowledge they know now or the education, and we were to put them together to create a constitution. I'm just curious, kind of what your thoughts were or would
Okay,
be.
well, let's put it this way. The whole Western and Middle Eastern kind of religion, and our society is based a lot on religion. The Abrahamic religion is a
Mhm.
very patriarchic kind of concept, meaning the father, the man, and so on. That is still, we don't have a female president. So I don't need to think about it. That would have been impossible, even with a woman who had all the intellectual capacity of the founding father to assert themselves in a way that the founding father asserted themselves. So they would not have been taken seriously.
I mean,
They
yeah,
did
that's
not-
so true. Even women these days don't get taken seriously.
Yeah, so that is that they would have failed, not because they didn't have the intellectual capacity of creating the system we have now.
Mhm.
It just nobody would have followed them and taken them seriously.
Well, and
Even-
maybe even if their own country, like the people that followed the founding fathers, even if they followed, they wouldn't probably be able to make these deals with other countries because the other countries and the other leaders
Would be male.
wouldn't
would
have
be
taken it
male.
seriously. But even 150 years or more later, after the independence, American independence, women still couldn't vote. Then nobody would take them seriously in 1900 and 1920s as a politician. Like there are stories, and if we would talk about that, like one of the biggest figures that people don't really know who influenced the future of women in our society was Eleanor Roosevelt. And she had a huge history, and people would accuse her to interfering with things just because she was sitting on the session of the Congress and nodding. She was a big part of the suffrage movement, and and lots of other things that gave women freedom that we are enjoying today. She was accused even to be remotely associated with that, and and that was not 1700 something. That was 1920s to 1940s. So I don't need to think about that. I mean, this is the writings are all on the wall. It doesn't matter that how hard they would have worked or how much intellectual capacity they would have had. They would not have been founding mothers of the United States, because that concept is still ahead of its time. We still don't have that concept yet in 2023, but things are changing. Okay, I could not accept for my daughters not to go to school. I tell my daughters, are you guys crazy? Why are you going to change your name to a name of somebody else? I think this is still, we are still, this fight is not over. Okay, and I won't accept anything from my daughter except that they stand on their own feet. One of the jokes I tell to my daughters is, when they know how to push my button. Sometimes when they want to really enrage me, they say, I want to be a princess, or I want to be a housewife, I want to be this, that they know that really making upset me. And my answer recently has been to them, yeah, you want to marry somebody and live with somebody else and marry an asshole like me that carries you through the life? No. You have to go to school. You have to stand on your own feet, and so on and so forth. So this fight is still not over, but we have been never it has been never as good as today.
Yeah.
Still not good enough, but it's a good time. Again, everybody who listen to that, please go read about Steven Pinker, who is truly almost a scientist, and putting everything that matters for our life today. And not only is it the best time to be a woman, it's the best time to be a human, period. For God's sake, it's the best time to be a wild animal on the Serengeti, because until recently, we killed them all and we put their heads on the walls, and now we have laws that protect even them. So we live in good times comparing to what it has been, but I'm hoping that more women will benefit from that and put it to good use.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thanks to women like AOC and Michelle Obama and all these women in politics that are really trying to kind of pave the way for the first lady, or the first president that's a woman.
Yeah.
You've come close.
Yeah, we're getting close.
This is still pending in US, it's still not, I can guarantee you there are lots of women out there that they have everything what it takes to be a president. Mm-hmm. And it's not about, that is, I think, what we finally are coming to the conclusion. We should not find the best woman president. We should find the best president then without any reference or importance of if she's male or female. And there are lots of them out there. And I think that is the point that we are getting very, very close to understand that the equality, the true equality, comes from the state of mind. Mm-hmm. And we are getting there. I'm very optimistic.
I think you made a great point there, Dr. Abbasi. Thanks for sharing that.
I agree.
So this has been a great talk, and thank you, Amanda, for choosing this topic for today. And if we should talk in future about more of this kind of women as well, we talked about it last time. We should talk about the wives and the significant others of this,
the first ladies,
fathers, the first ladies, and so on. There are lots of good stories about them, how they indirectly influenced our policies and so on. And many of them, they were very powerful. Okay.
Yeah, I'm
Okay.
looking forward to that episode. Also to
Yeah.
bounce off of Alyssa's idea of founding mothers. Even though the US, we haven't had a female president, there have been female prime ministers. So I think it'd be cool if we could go over some of these female prime ministers.
Definitely, definitely. Okay, well, thank you very much for watching us. For Essence, I'm Dr. Abbasi.
I'm Alyssa Haber.
And I'm Amanda Armagast. Thank you guys and stay safe.
Thanks, guys.